All right, let's see here. What do we got here? Let's try another one.
I think it's
Oh, I love
really
this
kind
guy.
of weird that we never got a Generation X president. Like we had Clinton, who was a boomer, and then we got Bush Jr., who was another boomer, and then we got Obama, who was a boomer, and then we got Trump, which is silent generation.
Even
So we
older.
went back a generation, and then we got Biden, which is also silent generation. Like we're gonna have, and the people who are gonna be the nominees for 2024 are Trump and Biden, who are both silent generation. So we're going to have people who were alive in the 1940s as the president
Yeah.
in 2024. And this makes my brain hurt. But what happened to Generation X? There's really not even that many of them in Congress or the Senate. Like there's way more boomers and now millennials than there are Generation X in Congress or the Senate.
Yeah, yeah.
Fair point.
I have thoughts about this, because
What do you think?
beginning a couple of years ago, it does seem like I want to say in politics in particular, because there's other things. I think in other industries, our generations have been very active and has been able to. I want to say allowed to participate, but in some instances, older generations couldn't. They had to step back. So you were saying earlier, college kids are the ones that make the video games. There's certain types of industries, businesses that rely on the innovation of younger folks, like the very streaming platform that we're watching, taking these videos from TikTok.
Right.
But politics is a whole different animal. And there's probably I can't think of another industry. I mean, think about the entertainment industry. Folks from Generation X are leading in there. That's why we got a lot of
Sure.
80s, content. Politics, it just drives me crazy. But he's right. And I think the reason why is the boomers refuse to retire. They do not want to step down.
Well, I hadn't considered that at all.
Yeah. And let's think a couple of things here. So, yeah, in fact, look, and trying to back this up again, so that's my opinion, and it turns out it's technically true for a couple of reasons, including the fact that Congressman Eric Swalwell, for example, who spoke with voters in Iowa and New Hampshire, South Carolina. He's a Gen Xer, and he was thinking, hey, maybe people want to hear from a new voice. And no, turns out what he learned is that voters are risk averse to younger candidates. And I can kind of understand you might have especially if you're an older person, you have a greater, comfort level with someone either of your generation or
Closer
there's
to your
this
generation,
automatic,
right.
closer to your generation, or you have this automatic feeling about someone, a paternalistic thing. If someone seems like a father figure to me or a mother figure to me, I tend to trust them more than someone who seems like the kid who should be mowing my lawn, kind of
okay.
thing.
I feel like we do hold the responsibility of a kind of a disconnect between the message we gave when we were younger and how we followed through on that. But either way, we can't win because on one hand, we were fight the establishment, rage against the machine. We brought that in from boomers because they were anti-war and protest. And so we had our version of that was hands off, like you guys are doing what you're doing. And we don't want to be a part of it. So that tracks. We didn't want to be a part of it. We still don't want to be a part of it. However, we also, on the other hand, not me or you personally probably, but a great many people would say, well, when I'm old enough, I'm not going to make these same mistakes. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to be able to do whatever. But we don't. We err toward the side of the whatever. It's like, I don't want to get involved, standoffish, laissez-faire, do what you want to do kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like we don't want to impose ourselves, or maybe we don't feel worthy of being in that role because we railed against it for so long. We don't want to become that.
Yeah.
So even if becoming that means you can make a difference that's positive, if it's something you just don't want to be, you find distasteful, I can see Gen Xers not wanting to become a part of politics because their entire life they thought politicians were bullshit artists and they don't want to become a bullshit artist,
I agree with you in that regard. Yeah, we were raised in the 1980s during an era where, Reagan was telling us, the president of the United States was telling us, don't trust government. And look, he had a reason to in a sense, except he's the president. So you think if anybody's in a position to get it fucking straightened out, he should. But instead he's like, don't trust anybody, including me. He's like the guy in Last Crusade telling Indiana Jones, don't trust anyone. Turns out to be a bad guy. Anyway, so yeah, and you know, we talked about this before. So all of our media followed suit. We have all these TV shows, movies, etc., that have these characters that were anti-government, but they were quasi-government. They were doing things, mostly enforcing some kind of law or law and order that the government normally would. But yeah, okay, coming out of Vietnam, coming out of Nixon, all that stuff, I get all that. So you're right. I do think we were disillusioned, and partly, like we talked about just a moment ago, our parents and older folks are telling us that we're worthless and dumb, and you know, yelling at us when we don't hold the flashlight at the right angle when they're trying to fix the sink from underneath or whatever. Yeah, so I think that's a good combination not to be motivated, but there's a good number of folks who are anyway, in spite of that, because somehow they grew up in a they had a normal childhood with loving parents, and there's just no place for them anyway. And I got some info with regard to this.
Okay.
A Pew Research study from 2023 shows that the House of Representatives is getting younger a little bit, and the Senate is getting older. How much older could it fucking get? The median age of the voting House is 57.9, down from 58.9, so about a year. The current Senate's median age, on the other hand, is 65.3, up from 64.8. Yeah. And when you consider, and this is going to sound like a smart thing, but I read this. When you consider that the median age in America is 39, or around 39, according to the Census Bureau, our country is being run by a gerontocracy, it turns out. Which means the old folks are
I don't like that they're doing it. I like the phrase.
Yeah. And take a look at this. If you want to see it by generation, because I was talking about it by age, on the right here is a chart that shows how the current House is based on generation. The yellow is Gen X. Yeah. Everything else is somebody else. But the green and the dark green are the older generations. And they outnumber us easily.
By a bunch.
Yeah. And so I agree with everything that we've said so far. And in fact, folks in the chat, including myself, agree with this. We're disillusioned. So why would we want to join that?
That's it.
But again, I contend that there's no place to go. And these old folks, once they get in, they're hard to get out because now you're running against an incumbent. And I found this. According to a 2023 piece by former speechwriter for George H.W. Bush, Mary Kay Cate, she said most baby boomers who delay retirement do so because they can't afford working, right? But she's talking about us, about regular folks. She points out these politicians who won't leave, they're millionaires. And when they retire, they get amazing government pensions and health care. Not even Medicare or Medicaid. They get the best health care.
Like proper paid for health care. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So
the health care we would like to have.
Right. We all, residents would like that. So she explains, she provides some other theories. One is that it's denial, that they associate stopping work with the end of their life. And they don't want to be reminded of their own mortality. Another one they say is identity driven, and the fact that they so closely align themselves with their work that what would it mean to stop doing my work? Who am I after that?
Well, if you do it for 60 years, I can see why perhaps you become identified with it. Yeah.
Another theory is ego. She says these folks are not exactly humble, so they think that they're indispensable. Who else is going to do it if not me? And then finally, she suggests, of course, that in the political world, their interest is often about power as well. And who would want to give up the power that these folks have? Get the fuck out. You're old.
I guess there's some power in there, but I would say by and large, you're ineffectual. And you see, I don't want to cast aspersions based on age, but certainly just like there are millennials and Gen Y and people that understand things in a way. When I say understand things, I should be more specific. They understand the general attitude of the current situation as far as pop culture and as far as the attitudes that people have that old people just don't adopt, myself included. I don't adopt the mentality or the thoughtfulness that people today have because they were raised in an entirely different way.
Yeah.
But when the country is younger, why should you have people that have never adapted making the laws?
Yeah.
And we see the butting of heads against lawmakers who are set in their ways from the 40s, who want to impose 40s like norms upon people that were not at all raised that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Enough to make me want to run for office.
Do it, John.
Not that frustrated.
No,
not that frustrated.
Next time,
Yeah.
Marcus says, and this is actually echoes a sentiment that I've seen, Gen Xers, content creators on these platforms respond to this video. Marcus writes, we aren't metered enough in our communication to run for office. Yeah. Some folks are suggesting you don't want a Gen Xer in charge. Can you imagine? Because like we talked about before, they don't give a shit what you think about them.
Yeah.
If they want to get something done in a certain way, they're just going to do it. They're going to directly tell you. And, so yeah. But that said, obviously the folks that would run for office, I imagine, and have the charisma to get it, would have the skills to do it.
Yeah, would have some more of that internal governors on their
Yes.
activity, probably.
Yeah. Like we do when Cat's around.